Can't believe it. Thursday, 6 o'clock. Again. The week just rushed by. Except this week, I think, has been slightly slower because we've been cryogenically frozen together. Welcome. I'm Russ Kane. This is Men's Radio Station, and this is exclusive to the station, the ABC of CBD, episode 103. Fantastic. You know him. You love him. He is the hunk of hemp, the Maharaja of marijuana. He is, of course, Mr. Ollie Mammon.
Hello, my ABC of CBD friends everywhere around the world. How are you, my darlings? Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday indeed. Happy Thursday.
So it's funny, when I move my fingers, I can literally hear them breaking. It's so cold.
Do
you know what I mean?
Look at this.
It's so cold.
You don't want to talk about fingers. Never break your hand.
See, you're like me, Russ, because you also have to go outside because you have a dog. You don't get this whole, kids are off school. It's fine. Let's lock them in the TV room. Grandpa and grandma can't make it round, but it's fine. They'll be safer. We have to get out every single day. And what happens is my dog doesn't realize that it's -4 degrees because he doesn't feel temperature. So he looks at me like, Dad, take me for a walk. And because it's snowing, he's out there for 2.5 hours.
Oh, it's freezing. I know.
And every day I've been coming back, my fingers have been blue. And I've just been like, I cannot believe, he doesn't realize how lucky he is. He has no idea.
Not a clue. And Ebony the mini schnauzer is the same. This has got nothing to do with the subject, but Ebony's, and she's exactly the blooming same. And it's like she doesn't feel the cold. She doesn't care.
What's really funny as well, I don't know if you've played the game of I don't know how Ebony is with fetch. Okay, if she always brings the ball back or whatever. But if you throw a snowball,
doesn't do anything, Ollie. She doesn't do anything.
So I'll throw Rusty a snowball, and he'll bring it back to me. But by the time it gets back to me, it's melted in his mouth. And it's so cute. He'll come back like, Daddy, look what I've got. I've got the snowball. Drop it. And it's just liquid just comes pouring out.
Nothing there. What have you got? I've forgotten.
A fox red lab.
Oh, lovely.
He's gorgeous. But he's really been loving it. I'll be honest with you. I'm exaggerating. I've really enjoyed going out with him in the snow. It's been really nice to have, this beautiful bright white. I know it's been freezing, but it's nicer than the rain.
It's the one thing I don't like about the UK, well, about a million things at the moment, but is the greyness. That's why I love America, because you look up and it's clear, even if it's freezing, there's clear blue skies, and that's much more joyful. Should we pay the rent and then we can get on with the
hell yeah?
Why don't we do that?
I'm sure you've heard before that good quality CBD needs to be really, really expensive. This is the new view of CBD. A product created by users for users. A product at an affordable price, available everywhere, at any time, at the simple click of a button. Just CBD and MCT oil. No additives, no preservatives, and no flavor enhancers. It's a simple subscription-based service. The cleanest possible CBD delivered to your door for the lowest possible price. Your product, your rights for the lowest possible price.
Boom. There you go.
Kablamo.
Where was that from?
Kablamo. It's like kaboom and kablamo.
I'm trying to think what that's from. Can't remember.
It's from something, right?
Yeah, blamo.
So most of the stuff running through my head, I feel like is from somewhere else, just spinning around. Or it's two random things from out there which have just clustered together in the brain.
Blamo.
Kablamo.
I love it.
So,
right.
Me and you today, us.
Yes, it does.
To ourselves.
Oh dear God. Okay.
I've got something I want to discuss. Okay, and it's actually a conversation I've been having quite a lot recently. I don't know why it's been coming up so much, but it's been coming up so much. So about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, my business partner sent me a little video. One of these online videos. It was one of these chats, and he was like, "I feel like this is happening to the industry." And as I was watching this video, and it's nothing to do with our industry, but it's this entrepreneur who's talking about how, he started in his field. It's quite vague, but he started in his field 12 years ago. And he was, quite senior in his company. And over the 7 years previous, he had built his company up, and he had, got it to a place. And it was all about, team building and networking. It was all about building this relationship, and like everything was all about, you know, community, and, you know, how this life of an entrepreneur, this life of a, you know, someone you're trying to build something, someone who's trying to build something which hasn't been previously created. You know, you work with people and you nurture people and you hold people close and you bring in strengths and you like create something which hasn't been created for, using people and relying on people. And what happens in it is it's a team who kind of attack a problem, and the team together successfully solve the problem. No winners, no losers, just, you know, team solving problem equals success.
Pretty
And
rare.
it's very rare. It's very rare. Very rare.
Very rare.
But no matter how, like in the start of his industry, this is what happened. And it made me realize that, you know, when we first started in the CBD industry 4, 5, 6 years ago, you know, that's what it kind of was. You know, we were all trying something new. You know, people were happy to help people up. A lot of people worked with other people. You know, if you had the opportunity of working with another like-minded cannabis individual or working with someone outside of the industry, most people chose to work within the industry. Most people chose to build relationships within the industry, maintain these relationships within the industry, maintain this warmth and this narrative, so we could take this idea and grow it into something. Now, that's the way it all started. It's strange because now I feel like things have changed. And then like basically this podcast went on to say about how over the next few years, he saw his industry really become more similar to other industries where you have winners and losers and everything's kind of created. So you have this competition. It's like this mentality which is ingrained in us from when we're children. You know, you play sports, you have winners and losers. You get graded in school, you have success and you have failure. People who get A's are the winners, people who get F's are the losers, and the winners look down upon the losers.
Well, everything up to that point is right.
Let me finish.
Yeah, all right.
Let me finish.
Okay.
And what happens is it kind of almost gets to the point. This is like my little touch. This is what I kind of see where a lot of these winners theoretically can't be winners unless there is a loser. So this whole idea of individual success and this whole idea of an accomplishment is actually not judged by where you are, but it's judged by where you are above others. So it's not about what you've managed to achieve. It's about what you've managed to almost take away from someone else. So you've achieved this, so someone else hasn't. And without the lose, people find it very hard to ascertain that they have won. You're giving me a really weird look, Russ.
Well, I tell you why. It's well, there's so much to unpack here. So much to unpack.
That's why we need the hour.
Yeah, because by the way, gang, I had no idea what Ollie was going to drop on me.
That's why there's no episode
I'm hearing this
title.
For the first time, right?
That's why there's no episode title.
I'm hearing this for the first time, so I gotta be my Hercule Poirot along with you, and we'll solve the mystery together, shall we? Tony Blair tried to bring in, and then I'll try and see where I'm struggling. Tony Blair tried to bring in this whole thing a billion years ago. You know, nobody's a loser. You know, if at school, if you've got the egg and spoon race and you come stone last, it's great. Life isn't like that. It would be lovely if life was like that, but it was nonsense. It was the beginning of the nonsense and the utter madness in which we find ourselves in our current state, which 20-hour conversation, which we're not going into now. But somebody will lose and somebody will win. Somebody's going to get past the finishing post, like a horse race. You know, not everyone's a winner in a horse race. You got first and last. That's how it is.
But that is a competition. Okay. The whole idea is in a competition.
It is a competition.
But in a competition or in a in competition, you need that. All right, but not everything needs to be phrased as a competition.
No,
and what happens is
not everything does.
What I've seen, Russ, is I'm not saying that the whole structure of competition. I'm not like I haven't turned communist overnight. Okay, so I'm not sitting here saying the structure of competition is a sham. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is a lot of people have been so ingrained with this structure of competition that unless they can visually see someone else losing, they can't see themselves as a success.
See, I don't understand that. And I don't understand that. I understand. No, I hear what you're saying.
You
And
hear
I
what I'm saying, but
understand.
you don't
No, no, no.
understand
I
it.
understand. Sorry, let me be clearer. I understand totally what you're saying, right? I don't understand how people operate. Take one of my areas, the area that I love, which is books and writing. Okay, authors don't see themselves as a winner if they get into the Sunday Times top 10 list and somebody else doesn't. They see themselves as a success if the book does well, but they don't require a fellow writer to not be a success in order for them to feel that they've done well. So I don't see it. I don't. It doesn't apply to
It's
everything.
fine. So, but once again, that's more of a creative space. And so I'm saying,
Okay,
like,
well,
from
take
the
the car
cannabis
industry.
industry,
Take the
let me,
car industry then.
fine,
Take the car industry. If you're working for Jaguar Land Rover, and you've got a runaway hit with, I don't know, I'm making it up. You've got a runaway hit with the Range Rover, let's say. You don't think, Ray, I'm only a success because the Lamborghini Urus is not a success. I don't know. I'm just giving you an example. You don't think about that. So I'm not sure how this philosophy applies to everything. It
a
just seems a
million
bit
percent,
strange.
a million percent. You've got at the moment, you've got two camps. You've got like Vogue, what's it called? Vogue. You've got like the Range Rovers, like the Vogues and those types, like the
Yeah,
brand new Defender, all right,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
versus like the G Wagon, all right.
Yeah,
And
okay.
yes, they're both 150, 200 grand cars if you go fully whack. Now, everyone who buys a G Wagon who doesn't
Yeah,
buy a Land Rover, G
yeah,
Wagon's one. And if you think there is not someone sitting there who's targeting every Chelsea mum, trying to
yeah,
get her to buy one or the other, and then
yeah.
they walk around Chelsea or drive around Chelsea, and they're like, you know what? I see 65% more G Wagons on the road this year than Land Rovers. G Wagon has one. And if you think there is not someone sitting in an office somewhere whose job it is to make sure that G Wagon has more market coverage than Land Rover, and G
But
Wagon
that's
has won
advertising and
over Land
marketing.
Rover, and there is this whole idea of winners and losers, then you are completely mistaken, Russ. Because 1,000,000% some dude somewhere, some analyst is getting paid 200 grand a year to guarantee that G Wagon wins over Land Rover.
Ollie, what we're talking about. Don't forget
But
this
that's
is
got
my.
nothing to
Don't
do with
forget
what I
this
was
is
talking
my.
about.
Don't forget this is my background. This advertising marketing is my background. It's what I did for forever. So that's what you're talking about. You're simply trying to get market. You're trying to get market share. But the point you're not doing, and in all my years in advertising, what you're not doing is taking pleasure and joy in the fact that somebody else has not sold as much as you. You're delighted that your brand is doing well, but it
I think
doesn't
that's
depend.
you, Russ. I
No, I
think that's
don't.
you, and I
No, I
think
don't think so.
I think what you're doing is you're judging everyone by the same standards which you hold within you. Most people, okay,
Mm,
most people do not think the way you think. That's why you started a not-for-profit mental health radio station, which is designed to help people, where there are no winners and there are no losers. There is just a service that people need, and like your end, I want to say, the person who wins in this station is the
mm,
audience, because you create the content and you nurture education for the audience. So
okay.
there's no structure. And if you got X amount of viewers over a different radio station, it wouldn't bother you, because it's not about you guys, it's about
But
the
why
end
wouldn't it?
consumer.
But no, the same thing would apply. You see, the same thing would apply. The same thing would apply. That's where you kind of. Well, let's bring it back to your industry then.
Fine.
I'm just very curious.
So in my
Um,
industry, so
mm,
what the way I was going, let's go back to the beginning, all right? Because Russ is going to
okay.
be a little bit harder to convince this week than I thought he would be, but it's okay. I'm not giving up. I've got 45 minutes left, and I'm going to win today. I'm going to win. Russ
All
is
right.
going to lose, and I'm going to prove it right.
All right, everybody. I'll pretend to lose by the end
No,
of
no,
the
no,
hour.
I don't want you to pretend to
I'll
lose.
pretend. I'll
But
pretend.
let me explain. So most industries, unfortunately, the precedent's already been set. So when you're dealing with lawyers, doctors, accountants, you're dealing with all of these industries which have been around for several generations, the narrative is already set in place. All right. There are winners, there are losers, and that is just the way it works. All right. Now, the cannabis industry was a new space, and there was nothing to really mirror ourselves on. We were standing there looking into the abyss, trying to create
Would
an
you
industry.
not? So I'm sorry to leap in, but I'm finding this conversation fascinating because I'm not because like everybody else watching and listening around the world, I don't know where we're heading. But if we allied it, and don't jump down my throat, just let me finish the sentence, all right? If you allied it to the the tobacco industry, let's say, just for a second, all right, I'm trying to think of something comparable, all right? Or if you there's some brands will be more popular than others, but what you're doing is in that industry, right, is you're trying to get market share. Everything is about market share. That's what is the phrase I've used since episode 1 when you looked at me like I was raving man. We're at episode 103. Now you get it. Follow the money. Follow the money. This is what happens. So you're just trying to get all the music industry. You're trying to get market share. You're trying to flog your product. That's it.
It's a very, very capitalistic simplification of it. But what you're doing is you're viewing all industries as being the same. You're viewing all people as being the same, which is completely fine because that's the narrative which is created. It's kind of ingrained in us from a young age.
Well,
this
yeah.
idea of, it's normal. It's just what people do. It's normal. But
What?
in
So
reality,
try and get people.
Russ, stop for a second and just actually hear me out here.
Right.
Because
okay.
Fine. So my biggest issue is I don't see it this way. So I don't see the fact that your success needs to be on the failure of someone else. You can be a winner. You can be a winner without having a trail of losers behind you.
Correct.
You can have success without other people behind you having failed. All right. It
Correct.
can happen. It doesn't happen though, Russ. But which is what you're saying, because it's just a standard way things work. It's just that's just normality.
It's a matter of terminology, isn't it? It's a matter of take a book. I'm going to come back to the book.
You keep on changing the subject.
I'm not changing the subject.
Let's pick one metaphor and stick with it. Okay,
well,
then I can counteract that metaphor.
Because all the industries are pretty similar.
But that's it. No, but the thing is, there we go. You just said it again. They're not. They're not.
Well,
and what happens is it's this mentality that everything's similar. This mentality that there needs to be winners and losers.
What do you want to do with your industry? You want to flog product. Let's break it down to the most
that's the whole point. This is what I'm trying to say. Okay, so stop, Russ. All right, go back to the beginning. Go back to the beginning of the industry. Right. When we started in this CBD world, started in this cannabis world, this idea of winners and losers didn't step into mind. There was this idea of we want to create an industry in front of us that does not currently exist. And we need to get products in the hands of patients who previously didn't have access to them. We also discussed this narrative that if a patient finds a product that works for them, the worst thing you could potentially do as a cannabis products provider is try and convince that patient to stop using what works for them and come over to your product. Why? Because they found their resolution. They found something that works. They have won. The patient has won, irrespective of you or your competitor winning or losing. And the main point is it's not about us as competitors in this industry. It's about the end consumers. And what I'm saying is this stupid, ridiculous blanket of winner and loser, which has been ingrained in us since we were kids, since we were in school, and teachers make this separation, which creates good and bad, winners, losers, he shall succeed, he shall fail, which is then shoved down our throats from such a young age that we think it's normal. But it's not normal. It's not normal for your pleasure to be solely dependent on someone else's misery. Why? Because you gave someone a medal and everyone else gets a medal. Guess what? They don't feel special. Why? Because we've had this sick tradition instilled in us that has to create this look down, see pain, see pity, see failure in order for us to feel success. And yes, it's ingrained in everything. And here's the thing, Russ, if you got a phone call tomorrow from your agent, listen, I found another writer very similar to you, like really, really similar to you, decided to publish his book, not yours, you would feel terrible. Don't say that.
I wouldn't be happy.
So you wouldn't be happy. Now, if you got a phone call tomorrow and saying, listen, Russ, working with this writer, but your work just seems to grip me more. You remind me of this writer 5 years ago when he still had his integrity. What would you say? Give me the job. Like that whole idea of, that whole idea of success always comes with someone else's misery. It just does. And what happens is when there are two of you who are on equal plateau, as individuals, as humans, what we want to do is strive to be on top. But why? And it's kind of it's a transition which I've never really had before. I've always just been Ollie on Ollie's journey. And I started in this cannabis industry to try and create something which didn't exist in front of me. There was no mirror to build myself up against. There was none of this. I see something to emulate that didn't exist. So we created an industry. And we were free with information, and we shared education, and we inspired each other. And I remember running into other people in my industry and us sharing ideas and nurturing each other to the point where we could grow, sharing tricks, sharing secrets, because we wanted to build an industry for the patients. Now it's completely different. Now it's turned into a place where, well, everyone wants to hurt everyone. It's that whole idea of I want to win. But in me winning or you winning, then we're forgetting about what it's all about, which is the end consumer, who the patient, who needs to win, the only one that matters. So our, you call it competitive journey is, and this competitive metaphor which has been thrown at us of winners and losers, this narrative which now governs us, has distracted us from our goal. And I want to say other industries don't have the same goal as us. Our goal is the people at the end of the product. And I've started to see more and more and more people just not being thought about. And it's one of the biggest issues in our industry is this whole winner-loser mentality is distracting from the actual goal, which is helping. And you never see, like the only industries you don't really see this winner-loser in is like the charity world. When you
that's not true. Oh, you're so wrong.
Let me finish my sentence. In the charity world, where people actually go out of their way to help people, like you've got 15, what's it called, missionaries who go and build a church somewhere. It's not who built the church better. They just go and build their church.
Oh, really? Ollie, which religion is better? That's why they're going out there. You see, this is where I disagree with you, which is okay. If you take your analogy of the missionary, you take your no. I'm not going to look, Ollie. No. I've been around too long. There's no point in me sitting around going, "Oh yes."
No. I agree with you. This is what I wanted to have. I don't
work for the BBC. Where you just sit there. Going,
No, but I didn't give you an insight into this episode because I wanted you to be a bit devil's advocate. So I'm not getting upset. I'm having this conversation.
Well, you can't get upset because there's no right and wrong.
I'm very emotional.
There's no right and wrong. It's not like we're discussing is the Earth flat, and you go,
"Yeah, the Earth's flat." It's just a concept.
And here's the thing. Let me just go back to let's just go back to your missionary analogy. The only reason they've gone out there, right, is because the starting point for them is they go out to the middle of freaking nowhere. I'm going back. I'm not talking about now. You go back to the Middle Age, times of the conquistadors, or then moving onwards. Why did they go out there? Because it was their mission that their religion, Christianity or Roman Catholicism, whatever it was, is better than your religion. Or why were there great wars in the Middle East, wars of conquest? Because the Muslim nations believed that they would. I'm going way back to the times of like Saladin and stuff. Why? Because they thought they were better.
Fine. Okay, cool. You're right. So what about a non-religious crusade? So like a non-religious, I just want to go like Houses for Humanity. An unreligious bannered Houses for Humanity.
All right.
Or something like that.
Make it simpler. Getting water to villages in. Let's take something which you really can't.
That's it. But fine, exactly. And whoever builds that pipe is a legend. It's not about winner or loser. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? And like it's
no, I do.
The winning the winning is when the villagers drink water. That is.
But then I've got to wind it back a little bit more. Let me wind it back a little bit more.
Go on, Russ.
If you take
my parade,
what's that? Pissing on your parade. I'm so sorry. No. I get where you're going, and I'll come back to it in a second. But just hear me out with this. Let's take something which should not be in the least contentious, which is bringing fresh water to a little village in the middle of Africa, right? Of course they should have it. There's absolutely no discussion about it. And the people who go out and do it is fabulous. And they've got money, let's just say from a charity. So the charity can pay for the people to go out and do the construction and pay for them to go out. We understand that. However, wind it right back to the fountainhead, no pun intended with my water building analogy. That charity has got to get the money in the first place in a very crowded space. Now, I know I was Chief Barker of Variety, the children's charity. I know what I'm talking about here. The last time I looked, there is something like 250,000 registered charities, probably more. We're not a big country, right? So my argument with that is, yeah, the end result, getting fresh water to a little village so people don't have to walk 50 miles for filthy mud water, of course, it's a wonderful thing. But all the charities are in huge competition with each other. And the only way they can get the fresh water is by getting the money in, which means they've got to be more successful than another charity that won't get as much money in. Do you see what I'm saying? You can wind everything right
So
back.
what happens when winning and losing, okay, and that chasing success actually means that more people end up losing? So you as a charity chasing the success of the investment to put in a water pipe into your village, all right, actually stops and restricts other villages from potentially getting water.
No, well, I see what you're saying is, let me see if I can.
Because that's the mentality right now. It's not about I need to feed my village. It's I need to feed my village. I need to water my village, and I need to make sure that just in case that food and that water runs out, everyone else's food and water is also the food and water for my village and my cause. And that's the mentality of the world right now. It's not like
you see, with the village thing and the patience thing. What you're trying to, if I get where you're going,
yes,
what's that?
Said you love to say no. It's like a no day.
It's not a no. It's
no,
not a no
Russ.
Day. It's not a no day. I used to do a lot
Russy
of debate.
no. That's what I'm going to call you now.
I used to do a lot of debating. This is what I used to do.
No, all right, no.
No, no.
No.
What I'm saying, what
I'm a yes man, personally.
What your industry set out to do was to help the patient.
And the issue
that's the thing. So
and the issue is when we first set out to help the patient, this you could call it standard trait of society, this winner-loser standard trait of society hadn't yet found its way into our industry.
Because you were a tiny industry.
True, but then also we hadn't had those influences yet. Because we're quite a grassroots, we're kind of born from the emotions of advocates, activists, and hippies. I think that's the best way of saying it. That's where we're and scientists, of course, but that's where we're bred from. It's more of the quest for the quest as opposed to the quest for success. So you journey in order to journey, and the journey is what is special, as opposed to the medal at the end of your journey.
It's the journey, not the destination.
And that's what it is. And I think the issue is with this whole winners and losers mentality, you don't think about the journey. Now, most industries are plagued with that issue. They are plagued with the issue of I need to succeed, and you can only judge your success based on seeing other people fail. You're in an office, they have leadership boards, all right? And if you're top of the board, it means you're not bottom of the board. And if you are top, it means everyone else around you is bottom. And when you walk around that room, you know that you are better than everyone else, which only makes you feel more successful. As opposed to that being completely irrelevant, the journey of how you got to being the best, that's the most important thing. And if you can, find a way
of the person paying your salary.
True.
You're quite
but once
right.
again, that's all part of this horrific umbrella metaphor we're living underneath.
I've got to say, so, all right. We've done 103 shows. You've introduced me to hundreds of your guests, hundreds. And there is a theme that runs through all of them. They're all from different walks of life, from different countries, different backgrounds, but they have a real humanity about them, because that's why they're in that industry.
And they all want to succeed. I don't think any of them wants to succeed over the backs of others. And I think I don't think any of our guests.
Why has this suddenly become a real bugbear with?
Because what happens is now is the industry is becoming more and more commercial. And
yes, of course.
Hold on, and it's becoming more and more and more commercial in the sense of outside money and this outside narrative coming in. And this outside narrative coming in of we need winners and we need to win and we need to crush our competition in order to win. But in reality,
finally,
the business was
finally.
never created off of crushing competition. The business was created on solving the problems which patients have. That's how all of our industry was crafted. And the mentality of the industry is not pushing us down the road which we were going down before. It's now making us fight each other.
Yeah.
But in reality, that's not how we all got here. We didn't get here by fighting each other. We got here by helping the end consumer, by thinking about the patient, by thinking about the user experience and the journey, by immersing ourselves in other people's pain, okay, in order to find a solution. No winners, no losers, okay, no competition, no structure. Do you understand? None of this like predefined structure, and no mirror which was staring back at us, which says you need to be better in using these parameters of success as your indicators or that you've made it. And the whole world is changing, and I can hear dialogue changing. I can see intent changing. No one's thinking the way we used to think. Now, a lot of the beautiful guests we've had on this show, they've vocalized this in one small way or another. People don't really want to start a fight with the industry because it's a hard thing to do, to look around our industry and be like, guys, you're failing. You have failed your industry. You are failing your industry because you are not thinking correctly. I know you're thinking correctly for you, but that's not what the industry needs right now. And you didn't get to where you are thinking like that. Winners, losers. You got to where you are thinking, all right, how many more people can I help? Who else can I provide who else can I provide a solution to? Who else has a problem that I can solve? That was it. It was solving problems. And when you solve a problem, it's not about winners and losers. Do you know, it's not about that. It's a completely different narrative, a completely different conversation.
I get that.
But I'm not saying it's not a standard thing in the outside world. It is. It just sucks. And it doesn't need to be that way.
It sucks big time. It sucks big time. Look, when I started with Capital Radio, where I was for 20 years on The Breakfast Show, it was a wonderful family atmosphere. It had been started, and as you were saying this, I was thinking of this, and this really is a parallel analogy. All right. Sir Richard Attenborough, the great Sir Richard Attenborough, and a team.
Wait, shut up. Richard Attenborough, David Attenborough's brother, Jurassic Park. Did you ever meet him?
I did, yeah.
Shut up. He's like my favorite person of all time. Yeah, he's literally my favorite. I cannot
I never met David Attenborough. I met Richard Attenborough.
David's cool, but Richard is just...
What, the actor? You like?
I love him. I just love him so much.
Well, of course I met him.
He's Santa Claus.
Precisely.
He's the real Santa.
He's an amazingly charming and lovely man. Now,
look, I love David.
Let me explain.
David's a god,
why.
But Richard, I love Richard.
Let me explain why this is. I'm not cynical. It's just that I've been through it because
Does that make it okay though, Russ?
No, it doesn't make it okay. No, it doesn't make it okay.
No, but I'm saying like what I'm trying to do is like I'm not saying this shouldn't happen. I'm not saying this doesn't. I'm saying it happened. But I'm saying it doesn't need to happen. Is what I'm trying to say.
All right. Well, let me explain. Let me hear me out where I'm going with this, because this is so. As I said, Richard Attenborough and a group of like-minded people started Capital Radio, and put all their money into it, etc. And it was a family. The atmosphere there was incredible. When the figures weren't doing well, and you will relate to this, Sir Richard Attenborough sold some of his own paintings and stuff to put more money into the project. All right? That's what he did personally, and kept it going. And it grew and it grew and it grew. And it attracted people who had a love of radio, just like you've got a love of tinkering around, creating wonderful products and helping people. Everybody had a deep-seated love of radio, as I did, and I continue to do. I far prefer it from television. There's no ifs or buts in my heart. All right. And it grew and grew and grew, and everything was one. And the atmosphere, like when you were starting out in your industry, was wonderful. It was warm, friendly, funny, charming, delightful. And then along came a huge organization called Global, and Global bought the business. And at first, everybody thought, oh, this will be okay. It's just another form of money. No, because with Global, instead of worrying about the end user, in your case, it's the patient. In our case, it was the listener. All right. Global were only interested in the share price and were a slave to the city. The atmosphere changed enormously. If the city were happy, then the people running the company, who were hard-headed businessmen, were happy. If the city was not happy and the share price dropped, people would get fired, shows would change. It was not about the creativity anymore. It was not about the love of radio anymore. It was about only one thing only. It was about the ratings, and it was about the share price.
About winning.
And it was totally about winning, and it was totally about crushing the opposition. And
But
they
why?
brought in a team that, to this day, are the toughest people I've ever met. No, I was very lucky. They left me alone because the show was a runaway success with 4 million listeners a day. So they didn't touch it. Why didn't they touch it? Did they like me particularly and everybody else? Not particularly. Don't think they gave it monkeys one way or the other. What they liked was the fact we were an enormous cash cow. So it worked. We were left alone. Everybody who wasn't a success, using your parameters, was either fired on the spot or demoted or shouted at, etc. And it
But
became
you didn't become a success.
Hmm?
Okay, you didn't become a success thinking I need to be better than everyone else. You guys became a success because your show was incredible and you went out there to
And we
create
loved
the best
and
user
like
experience
you,
possible.
And like you, we wanted to be the most creative we could.
Exactly.
We loved what we did, and it came from the heart. We wanted to give the best entertainment that was possible. So I'm very understanding. I know you think I wouldn't be, but I'm very understanding. And look, if you look at it from another angle, a company like Global, it's the most extraordinary success.
But one thing we have to bear in mind, the radio industry was
Yeah.
65, 70, 80, 90 years old at that moment of time anyway.
It was old. Well, commercial radio in the UK was very new.
Well, you say
Bear
it
that in mind.
wasn't very new. I mean, like
Oh,
radio
oh, really?
started in the 1920s,
Really?
1930s, right?
Commercial radio in the
No,
UK.
but radio in general started.
Doesn't matter because it was completely different. We had
So
very
when did
different
commercial radio start?
in the UK in the 70s.
Fine.
There wasn't anything
Fine.
before it. There was nothing.
I thought it would have been like 60s.
No, there was the BBC and there was the BBC. There were no commercial radio stations. What they had was the first commercial radio stations when I was a kid and I liked them were the pirate radio stations. No, remember, this is not the American model. The American model was based on commercial radio stations and adverts. We'd never had that before. We'd only had the BBC, the light program, the home service. That's what you had. Okay? That's what you had. No adverts, state run, paid for by your license fee.
So how long would you say how old was the industry at this moment of time? 20 years old? 15, 20 years old?
When the big boys came in and changed everything. Oh, probably maybe 20 years.
20 years. So we're like 6 years old, 5, 6 years old, and they came in about 3 years ago and started changing everything. They also came in with this mentality of win, 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 win. But when you come in with this mentality of win, 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 you don't really know what you're playing for. All right. And that's the main thing. They don't know what they want to win a game that they do not understand.
But what do they want? They want to return. Do they want? And I don't know the answer. I presume
They want to crush the competition, but they don't want to think like the competition in order to crush them. And it's one thing I've seen over again, like this narrative of it, you know, like these corporate big hitters, these corporate heavy hitter, we're going to destroy the competition.
Yeah.
If you don't really understand the marketplace, therefore you don't understand the way your competition's thinking, you can't really crush them. Like if someone wanted to go to war with me, all right, it sounds really mental, but I'm not playing the same game as you because I'm not playing to win or lose.
I get that.
So how are you going to beat me at a game that I'm not playing against you? And that's the issue at the moment. You have a lot of corporate heavy hitters coming in, throwing money at something which doesn't make sense. And then you have a lot of smaller individuals who are trying to get crushed by these bigger companies. But these smaller individuals are playing a completely different game because they're not playing to win or lose. They're playing to satisfy and, satisfy their users. They're here to create a positive user experience.
So let me ask you the big question is, what do you want to do about it?
What do I want to do about it? Honestly, there's a lot I want to do about it. I just kind of wanted to kind of give a little bit of microphone time to this narrative. I wanted people to know out there that you don't need to play this game by old school rules. The old school rules of you need someone else to lose in order for you to feel like you've won this competition thing. So like we get nominated for awards. I never started this show to get nominated for awards. I don't really care about that. And why are they creating this competition between us educators in order to be like, I've won an award? It makes a difference. Like, your award should be the fact that you educate people every single week. You disseminate information to people who need it. That's why you started doing this. So we had a guest on a few weeks ago. Actually, when we did the party, Mary Biles came on. And you could see Mary was deflated. She had an energy and she said, she goes, the industry's very deflating. Because I feel that she came into this space wanting to achieve something. Now, Mary has disseminated incredible. She's educated so many people, so many people. She's won. So for her to kind of have that mentality of, being deflated doesn't make sense because people own her book. People read her book. People quote her book. People still listen to her podcast. People mention her name and people mention the fact that she's helped them.
So what is she upset about then?
That's what I'm thinking. What's she upset about? Why? Because our industry's been ingrained with this narrative of winners and losers, which makes us start to feel like we're losing. I had that for a period of the last couple of months, Russ. I had the feeling that maybe I've lost in my industry. And I started to think that way because a couple of people said to me, "You've lost in your industry." And it kind of started to agree.
What does that? When they say that to you, what does that mean?
It's bullshit because it's a completely different. What I'm trying to say is a completely different game that I was never playing.
Ollie, they're just I'm getting back into my mental health state here, which is the main thrust of men's radio. Of course, that's why Howard and I started it. They're just words. What does it mean you've lost in your industry? Are you still doing what you like and love?
No, what I'm saying is I don't understand it either, Russ, but it's this narrative that people create. And when it's thrown down your throat or when it's created as this dialogue around you, it's very hard not to listen. And a lot of people... I'm just explaining the situation, Russ. This is not an opinion. It's not fact either. It's just like... It's my view of things. Do you know what I mean? It's just a view, and it's constantly changing. Do you know what I mean? It's this adaptable view, hence why it's not a fixed opinion.
If you've got a love of something, all right, you've got a love of it. Take writing. Publishing industry is gigantic. It's a huge money-making machine for the publishers, not for the writers, unless you're very lucky. All right? Hear me out. If you're happy to write your book because that's your love, and it sells to your friends and family, and you're happy with that, it's fine.
Right, so I wrote a book, Russ. Let's go back on this. I wrote a book. I wrote the book just to write the book. No, hold on, just to write the book. And do you know what everyone around me said to it? Why don't you get it published? Why don't you try and get it published? What's the point of writing a book if you don't try and get it published? Because that's the mentality of the world around us. These are not writers. These are not people who have ever done anything creative. But that's the mentality of the world, is that one needs to push something forward in order for it to be perceived as a victory. But in reality, writing the book is enough.
That's the victory. That is my point.
So you agree with me, but you've just disagreed with me for the last hour for no reason.
What? No, but this is no. But this is my point. If you write a book and it sells a few copies, and your joy and your purpose was merely that process of writing the book, that's fantastic. If you write a book and want to enter the commercial space because you want your book to be in W.H. Smith at every airport and people reading it by every pool, and that's what you want, and you want to be the next J.K. Rowling or, the late, great Jackie Collins or whatever, and that's what you want, that's a different thing.
That's external, though. That never comes from inside, Russ.
No,
Never
it's
comes from
external. No,
inside.
it's external.
The same
it's
way the
external.
kid who plays football in school, who's so good at football, he never wants to be a professional football player. Everyone else around him creates that narrative that that's what he needs to do. But in reality, all he wants to do is play the game.
Yeah,
You know, like no child
So
starts playing football wanting to be a professional. No child starts writing or drawing wanting to make a career out of it. It's something they enjoy, and they enjoy the act of it. And this idea, this narrative of winners and losers creates this competition in everything we do. And it shouldn't, because then what it starts to do is tamper with everything we do. Why? Because when you're doing something for a reason, it comes out very differently from doing something for no reason. And doing something just to do it is a beautiful way of completing a task. Doing something to get credit, doing something for a purpose which is greater than yourself. Do you know what I mean? In order to get that greater praise, that greater appreciation, that pat on the back from someone who would never previously pat you on the back, just for you to feel special that you've accomplished something based on their narrative. Do you understand what I mean? It doesn't make sense.
I get it completely.
And it drives me mental, Russ, because it happens over and over and over again. And what I've started to see is it get into the little cracks and crevices of society which didn't previously have it. That mentality of winners and losers, and I need to be better, and I can view someone failing, and that makes me feel successful. That is a massive problem.
That says a lot of
that's the world, Russ. That's the world. Think about, you get a parking space, someone else doesn't. You don't feel bad that they haven't got a parking space. You feel great that you have got a parking space. But in reality, it's 4 degrees outside, and this poor bastard's got to walk for 10 miles to get to his car now.
What would you like to do about that?
No, but just turn around like. But
there's only X number.
It's just ingrained in us.
But
it's ingrained in us, Russ.
Ollie, there's X number of parking spaces. If you use that analogy and expand it a bit, there's X number of companies like yours. All right.
I'm listening.
That's how it is. That's how it is. So what do you know, it depends how you want to live your life. Sound like I'm lecturing you, but it depends how you. Well, it is, because everything we do is therapeutic. I
just don't think cannabis needs to be this way. That was the main point of this. It's like,
no, I get that. I totally get that. If you could have a clean sheet and start and just keep it as a cottage industry with this sort of
it doesn't need to be cottage. It doesn't need to be cottage. Just we need to realize what we're actually doing here. And you being a successful cannabis company isn't based on your stock price. It's not based on your share price. It's not based on your ROI. You being a successful cannabis company is based on the is the word lineage, the amount of patients you've helped, the amount of people those are your gold stars. Those are your ticks. If you've got 100,000 patients who all benefit from your product, even if you are the smallest company out there, do you know what I mean? Like who gives a shit about like the status of your company when in reality your company is doing far greater, like doing greater things than most other cannabis companies out there.
It all comes down to the ethos of the company, doesn't it?
We were speaking about some of the biggest I went out for lunch yesterday with someone. We're speaking about some of the biggest CBD companies in the industry, and he threw out a few names, and I laughed because these companies are not the biggest companies out there, but actually, as public would perceive them, they are the biggest companies because that is what's happened. They've created this image of we are winners. So you've got like Claudia Winkleman's company and you've got David Beckham's company who are presenting themselves as winners.
I didn't know that Claudia had a company.
Yeah, I think Claudia just sold her company to Beckham. It's like there's this like weird incestuous celebrity cannabis world. Everyone's doing everything wrong. Like literally, you couldn't be making bigger mistakes if you tried.
Well, it's like David.
They've all got fantastic business advisors, don't they?
It's how the whiskey industry looks at. I'm not knocking David.
Let's do some more David bashing.
No, we're not doing that. But it's how the whiskey industry looks at. I think it's called Club Blue. Is it? And everyone in the room laughs. They laugh. They actually laugh. I'll leave it there. I'm not trying to be deliberate.
But I'm saying what happens is you have these companies who go out there like we are the biggest, we are the best, but in reality they don't really know what they're doing, and it creates this. For me, it's a big discomfort. I feel very uncomfortable in this space nowadays because I just see everything just going wrong, left, right, and center.
So
I see everything going wrong
there's
in my
several
side of
things
the
to
industry.
again unpack here, but it's about you in a good way. I don't mean it's about you. I mean it's about you. One is you can continue to do your thing, keeping the same ethos, keeping the same ethics, and ignoring all the hubbub that's around you, or you can join in. What happens if you decide I'm
I
not
just feel
playing this
bad for the
game?
patients. It's not really about my journey. Do you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
not really about me. I'm thinking more about the end consumer. I'm
Is
thinking
the
about,
consumer suffering?
I think, yes, they don't know better. They don't know better because they're not seeing what could be in their hands, what could be in their bodies, what they could be getting as a product, what they could be getting as a service. So they are
So,
only seeing what they are getting. And some
so are
consumers are
big
happy, some
companies?
consumers are not.
All right.
But
So,
we know with all consumers in all industries, they are as wise as we enable them to be. You know, they are
precisely.
only as
Of course.
educated as we help them to get that educate. You know, they only have as much information as we give them. And I
Sure.
personally know that patients are missing out. I know that some of the concoctions, some of the ideas, some of the things which we do design will never make it to the end consumer. But the end consumer needs this. This is what the end
Why
consumer
won't
needs.
they?
But
Why won't they make
it's
it?
not commercially
Whoa!
viable.
There you go.
It's not commercial. It's not commercially viable. Or once again, it's the winner and the losers. That's the main thing. This is not a winner's idea.
They're not going to put the money behind it. Is what it really
No,
comes
because
down
sometimes
to.
it's not just money. Sometimes what happens is you know you have winners in a company and losers in a company, and the winners only maintain their position as winners by not lifting losers up to the top. So that whole idea is if there is something where if there is one of these perceived losers who has a different focus to one of these perceived winners who has a focus on monetary success, which gives them their gold medal, which means they can stand on the pedestal, and then you've got someone else who's standing there who's focusing on patient care, and there is no gold medal for patient care. They will never be the winner.
Let's just look at patient care for a sec. What can be done to ensure that the patient is getting the best, most efficacious? Mary Poppins.
I can't answer that, Russ.
You can't answer.
I can't answer that.
So, what you've done is you've proposed. You've told us the problem.
Restructure of the industry. Do you mean but it's not a logical answer?
You have to answer something because we've spent 58 minutes discussing a serious problem, and we're not offering
2 minutes.
Even a hint of a solution. Do you see what I'm saying?
So what I would say is I would say to all of us, start thinking about what we used to do and why we used to do it. Start focusing on how you got to walking in the first place, as opposed to once you learned to sprint, how far you could sprint. Look at the initial steps you took and why you took them, and focus your journey back onto that.
Back onto basics,
and back onto, think about originally when you had what was in front of you and you had a problem you had to solve that was in front of you. Go back to that, because that's how we built this industry. That's how we helped this industry. That's how the industry was created. And for the first few years, this place was a beautiful, beautiful place to work and where patients actually
So people like yourself could and would have a willingness to do that. I see that. But when the companies have sold out, in literally and metaphorically, to larger corporations who are really there for the funding and there to ensure that the bottom line is healthy, how are they going to do that?
Yeah, but the bottom line was still healthy. Do you know what I mean? You're acting like in the startup stage, people made no money. That's how we got here. We got here by being, successful, by being successful for our patients and being successful for ourselves. There was like 2 winners. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
we won because we built something new.
and
they won because they got products that worked.
Yeah. No, I see that.
I'm saying there was no losers. And if someone did lose, as people who wanted to, provide a therapeutic relief, as people who wanted to provide a solution to the problems, we used to try and find that solution. Therefore, the end consumer never lost. There was always, potential that something new was coming. There was always that solution, which was on the horizon.
Yeah.
And I've seen it more and more and more and more where the focus is money, and people's narratives have changed and people's voices have changed. And the focus is all about money.
Yep.
But you made money in the start not focusing on money. And most of the people in this industry who only focused on money, they weren't here for very long.
And it's like a drug, isn't it? It's never enough. It's never enough. That's the thinking. It's never enough money. And that's the nub of it all. What do they say? Money is the root of all evil. Boom.
It just drives me mental, Russ. It
I
doesn't need to be that way.
understand. I understand your frustration. I do understand completely where your kind of anger and disappointment.
But I also feel like, I know last week or 2 weeks ago, they were talking about how the market's dropped off a little bit and how there's less buzz around the CBD market. We were actually speaking to Ruby about this, and she was saying from a writing perspective, she seems to be writing more about psilocybin, psychedelics, other forms of new drugs which are coming onto the market, new old drugs with old drugs with new purposes which are coming onto the marketplace. Yep. And I also believe our greed and our corporate focus and this desire to win and lose is what's kind of dragged us out of the media as well. Because originally, when we were going out of our way to try and fix problems, media was all over that. The mushroom world right now, they're focusing on fixing problems. No one's coming out with, I've got $1 billion company, and I'm going to go buy $1 million companies, and I'm going to take over this space. And if they are doing that, they're really going at it from a pharmacological research perspective, really trying to acquire as much information as possible, and they're trying to support those structures, as opposed to trying to dominate and win in an industry which...
Why does fashion change every year? Why do cars change every year? Because people need to pretend there is new stuff. And it was only a matter of time before people said, "Oh, yeah, we've heard all about cannabis. Yeah, we've heard all about CBD. What's the new kid on the block? What's the new thing? What's the new excitement? What's the new thing we can talk about? How can I? That's what it is." So they'll do mushrooms, and when people are bored with mushrooms, they'll find scaffolding. Go and chew a scaffolding pipe or whatever it is. I don't know. They're always looking for the new thing. Why? Because they got to fill column inches. It's a horrible, perfect circle of hell. They've got to fill column inches. The manufacturers want to create something new so that you're going to have to buy it. They want to have and don't forget, built-in obsolescence. Now, it is, I feel horrible saying that with something which is to do with the medicinal world. But that the built-in obsolescence mentality is that, gosh.
What do you mean by that, Russ?
Built-in obsolescence. Do you know that all right, silly example. Light bulbs, sorry, I've got to get rid of this. Light bulbs would actually work incredibly better. Do you know that? Do you know what? Light bulbs would last for over 100 years. So they have built-in obsolescence. There is a light bulb in a fire station in America that has been there since, I think, 1902. It works perfectly.
What's the difference?
What happened was all the light bulb manufacturers said, wait a minute here, boys and girls. Well, boys really in those days. We're all producing a product. The product's fantastic. What's the big flaw with the product? It doesn't go wrong. Oh, what does that mean? Well, no one's going to buy more of the product. Why? They don't need to, because the light bulb works perfectly well. It'll last literally 100 years plus. So what do? They
build
all
and
agree,
fail.
all the manufacturers of light bulbs across America, in the very early stages of it, I go back a long time, built in deliberately obsolescence, so the product would fail. So that they all agreed. Because that was the only way people were going to have to buy more light. But that has remained to this day. And as I said, when they used the original light bulbs, the one in the American fire station is still on from 1902, I think it is, or 1903. Something ridiculous.
121 years. I did not know that.
It still works. So the only reason light bulbs don't work is built-in obsolescence, which was an agreement right across the board by the light bulb manufacturing companies. All right. So that's what built-in obsolescence is. They've got it with phones. They've got it with, when you say no.
5 seconds, Russ.
God's sake. PR company trying to push another thing. Right. We're out of time.
We're done.
That's it. We're done. Ollie, you know what? You're a special person. I don't mean special needs. I mean, you're a special person. Because I got him before you said the gag, because you do.
There we go.
Because you're very self-depreciatory. You're a special person. You have a mission in life and you have a purpose in life. Don't be deflated. Don't be pushed around by other people. Stick to who you are.
Amen,
Stay true to yourself, because otherwise you will never be happy.
Amen.
Stay true to what you want to do, and you keep helping other people, because that is what gets you out of bed every morning, and that's what motivates you, and that's what you love, and most importantly, that is who Ollie Mammon is. We will be back. All things together. Until then, take care, everybody, and try and stay out of trouble. Bye, gang.